Using quotes in your essay. Introducing sources. The first time you use the name of a source in a text of your essay, the source needs an introduction. This is without question. Each source needs an introduction. Here are some examples. Quoting means taking the exact words from an original source. You should quote material when you believe the way the original author expresses an idea is the most effective means of communicating the point you want to make. If you want to borrow an idea from an author, but do not need his or her exact words, you should try paraphrasing instead of quoting. A quote should never stand on its own. How often should a quote be used? When you're writing, you should quote as infrequently as possible. You never want your essay to become a series of connected quotations because that leaves little room for your own ideas. If you think it's important to quote something, an excellent rule of thumb is that for every word you quote, you should have at least 3 words of your own. This means if your quote consists of 5 words, you need to have 15 words of your own in the same paragraph to counterbalance the quote. What is the difference? Quoting involves copying short sentences or passages from the original text word for word. Then you place the copied wording within quotation marks. It also needs to include an in-text citation using the expected formatting style. In this class, that is MLA. Paraphrasing involves putting a section of text into your own words. It changes the words and phrasing of the original text, but keeps the original meaning of the text. This also needs to have an in-text citation using the expected formatting style. Summarizing involves stating the main ideas and findings of a text into your own words. It presents a general overview, so is usually much shorter than the original text. It includes an in-text citation using the expected formatting style. Important quoting rules. The 2 most important rules when quoting are: a quote should never stand on its own. This means that you always have to have your own words in the sentence that contains the quote itself. Look at the 2 examples below. The one with the check is acceptable. The one with the X is not. Do not overquote. This means that you need to remember that you are the only one writing the essay. 98% of the words in the essay should belong to you, not someone else. Condensing quotes. Most of the time, a quote will be added to your text to support the main idea that you have already made within the paragraph. The quote will be added to a sentence within your text. You should never explain a quote after placing it in your paragraph. If you have to explain a quote, you are not using it correctly or you have not introduced the idea correctly. Sometimes you will need to modify the words or format of a quotation in order to fit it in your paper. Whenever you change the original words of your source, you must indicate that you have done so. Otherwise, you would be claiming the original author used words that he or she did not use. If you have to change more than 2 words in a quote, you need to use another quote. Condensing quotes continued. For example, let's say you want to quote from the following passage in an essay called United Shareholders of America by Jacob Weisberg. When you quote, you generally want to be as concise as possible. Keep only the material that is strictly relevant to your own ideas. In this case, you would not want to quote the middle sentence, since it is repeated in the more informative last sentence. Just skipping the sentence would not work, as the final sentence would not make sense without it. As a result, you must change the wording a little bit. Your quotation might end up looking like this. The ellipses indicate that you have skipped over some words in order to condense the passage. The brackets around the ellipses show that you changed the passage and it did not originally have the ellipses. However, even in this version, it's a little bit lengthy. There is something else you can do to make it even more concise. Try changing the last sentence. From, he tends to serve himself badly by focusing his pursuit of happiness on something that very seldom makes people happy in the way they expect it to. 2. He tends to serve himself badly by focusing his pursuit of happiness on money. The brackets around the word money indicate that you have substituted that word for other words the author used. To make a substitution this important, however, you had better be sure that money is what the final phrase meant. If the author intentionally left it ambiguous, you would be significantly altering his meaning. That would make you guilty of fraudulent attribution. Quotes within quotes. Sometimes you will find partial quotes within one of the sources that you are using. When you have embedded quotes or quotations within quotations, you should switch from the normal quotation marks to single quotation marks to show the difference. For example, if an original passage by John Archer reads, your quotation might look like this. Note the double quotes surrounding the entire quotation and the single quotes around the words quoted in the original. Including long quotes. You should only include long quotes if it is absolutely necessary. It is better to paraphrase or summarize than to use long quotes. A long quote is a quote that is 4 or more sentences in length. Long quotes do not belong in the body of a paragraph. They should be slightly removed. Use the following instructions to insert a long quote into a paragraph. Rules for inserting a long quote. Change the font to one noticeably smaller. For example, in a document that is using 12-point font, you should use 10-point font on the long quote. Double indent the quotation. That means adjusting the left and right margins so that they are about 1 inch smaller than the main body of your paper. 3. Left justify the text. This means make it so that each line begins in the same place, creating a straight line on the left side of the quotation, while the right side can still be jagged. Rules for inserting a long quote continued. Do not use quotation marks for the entire quotation. The graphic changes you have made already, like changing the font, double indenting, etc., are enough to indicate that the material is quoted. For quotations within that quotation, use normal quotation marks, not single ones. Here is an example block quote. Notice the text above and below the block quote belong to the same paragraph and are also formatted like the rest of the essay.